Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And just want to remind everyone, we do have a Facebook page. It'd be nice if you could like our Facebook page. We post all kinds of stuff on there that relates to the episodes and stuff that sometimes doesn't sort of relate to music, but we talk about on these episodes. So if you'd like to go ahead and like that, it's the No Name Music Cast. I think it's facebook.com/No Name Music Cast. But if you put No Name Music Cast in your Googler, if you give it a Goog, as Joy would say, you will be able to find that. And if you could like that page, and if you like this podcast, share it with your friends. That would be fantastic.
Would be awesome.
Fabulous. So we're going to start off the show with a tip of the day. I think, Joy, what's the deal with this tip of the day jingle? I'm getting mixed messages.
I don't know. We're still waiting on Phil. Phil has not come through. We might have to start sending him messages just like cough, Phil, jingle, just random things. Because he promised me. And to be fair, if he doesn't write one soon, it's probably only going to be like 3 chords. I might be able to pull it off myself at this point. So we're giving you a countdown here, Phil. But we're going in past the holidays. And then once we get out of January, we will have to see. If we haven't gotten a tip of the day, me and Tim will have to get another writer.
Exactly. I mean, you or I could do it, but I think it's cooler if one of our...
someone else does it.
Yeah, one of our loyal listeners does it. So, anyhow... tip of the day, Joy. What tip do you have this week?
My tip is very specific. We have had our first real snow in the area. Mm-hmm. And if you are in an area where it snows and you're able to get out the next day, because me and Tim both had snow in the morning, then we were able to get out in the afternoon, clean the top of your car off. Don't just clean your windshields. Don't just clean your lights. Clean the top of your car off, because if you don't clean the top of your car off, what happens, Tim?
What happens is that when you first drive it out on the interstate or motorway or whatever you want to call it, it just creates a snow cloud behind you. That's what happens, and that is annoying for motorists. However, what happens is that you bring it home and then that snow freezes and turns into ice. And then you go out the next day and you're going 70 miles an hour. And at some point, the wind will catch it. And this huge, big, massive, thick sheet of ice will fly off your car and whack into another motorist.
So as you can imagine, it was not today. Well, maybe it was today. So I was behind this one car who did not clean it off. And you had the little fuzzies where it looked like a snow hurricane is going on around you. Mm-hmm. And then I saw another car that a piece of ice flew off and almost hit my vehicle. So my tip of the day is clean your car. Also, don't follow too closely because you might get hit with the ice. Thankfully, I was not.
There we are. And I mean, we have a rich tradition of Joy's injuries. I don't need Joy's vehicular injuries too.
It was funny. I kind of forgot what my tip was because I thought of it while I was driving home for obvious reasons. And then I was sitting there going, what was my tip? What was my tip? Oh, yeah, snow.
and I must say, just as a footnote to this, so I was walking out from the office because Joy and I work in the same building. And we were both walking out together. And I had Joy and I had ice on the floor, and it was a catastrophe waiting to happen. And I said to Joy, these two together, I'm not comfortable with this.
I was offering to help carry something. He was like, no, get in your car. I don't need your help.
Well, I have a tip for you, which is loosely related to your tip. It's once again about weather and snow. So if you have a car that has a remote starter on it, and I'm very lucky that my car that seats about 5 does have a remote starter factory fitted on the fob, which is super nice. So like in the summer, you can crank it and put the air conditioning on so it's nice and cold in there. Or in the winter, you can set it so it defrosts your windows. So when you go out, your window's already clear, and then you can clear your snow off the roof, which is obviously Joy would like us all to do.
Yes.
But it puts you 10, 20 minutes ahead in the morning if you're running a bit short of time. Now, my tip is if you have that set up and you don't have a fancy car that has like a digital readout that you can program and stuff that's just got manual dials like mine, put it on the windscreen setting and turn the heat and the fan all the way up before you park it. Because otherwise what happens is you get in the car and you're like, oh, this is nice and toasty and warm around my feet. And then the windscreen is just completely iced up.
I saw that one coming. You know, we're this was our first snow of the winter. We're learning out here, and then it's supposed to snow again for us tomorrow. Actually,
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I haven't lived in this area for 11 odd years, or Joy for a lot longer. I mean, this snow stuff is brand new. I mean, we've never seen it before.
No, never. Yeah, it was. So it's just been a wintry week for Tim and I.
There we go. Well, anyhow, it is Joy's turn to pick the topic this week, but we just have a small footnote, a kind of new no-name musicast section that probably won't be repeated, if I'm being honest. So many, many years ago, just to give some context of this, I was sitting in our break room, which was the genesis of the no-name musicast, and somebody was it you handed me a moon pie?
I don't think so, but I was sitting there with you when you got the moon pie.
Okay, so one of our co-worker friends handed me a moon pie, and I'd never had a moon pie before, and I decided to eat it because it seemed delicious, and I ate it, and I exclaimed at the top of my lungs, "This is a wagon wheel!" And which everyone thought was incredibly hilarious. So I decided that we should do a wagon wheel moon pie taste test. Now, if you don't know what either of those look like, it's like I've got it here. It's like they're both like biscuits covered in chocolate, and the wagon wheel has like a jammy bit in the middle, and it's got marshmallow in it and things like that. I'm going to post up a picture of both of these products on our Instagram and Facebook, so you will be able to see what they look like. But I don't think, Joy, have you had a moon pie before?
I've had a moon pie before.
Okay, but you certainly haven't had a wagon wheel.
No.
So I got these wagon wheels imported from my international shipping division, or my mum, whichever you want to call it, who brought them in for me. So we are ready to do this taste test. Now, I've already had both at some point in my life. I haven't had this batch of wagon wheels, but I've had these before. So I'm curious to know, Joy, I want you to take a bite of the moon pie and then take a bite of the wagon wheel, and I want your pros and cons and thoughts on the two.
Well, from feeling them, the moon pie is much softer. The wagon wheel feels more like a puck. Mm-hmm. But the moon pie, if you've never had a moon pie, it's got like a marshmallowy middle. I'm going to take a bite. I've had one, and they taste really good if you microwave them. I'm not big on them, but they're better if you microwave them for about 10 seconds.
Okay.
So it tastes like I remember. Mm-hmm. Now I'm chewing everybody because there's a ton of marshmallow in the middle of that.
Yeah, this isn't good radio. This is a
I know, I'm trying
visual.
my hardest not to chew in their ear. So, and what's interesting is the moon pie on like where the marshmallow part is, it kind of covers it, but there's a lot of like marshmallow showing. Whereas the wagon wheel, they have successfully covered it a little bit. And the package says "Epic Inside," whatever that means. All right. It's much harder and crunchier. They're very similar, though. You're not wrong.
It's a similar thing, isn't it?
It is. I will say that the moon pie is softer and the wagon wheel is much crunchier, which I think I prefer the wagon wheel. Besides the fact, is it a strawberry jam that's in it?
I don't know.
It might be cherry, which Tim didn't know this going into this. Cherry's my kryptonite in life, besides olives. So I could skip the whatever the jam part is. So sorry, I don't find that very epic. But yeah, I'd say they're very similar. And Tim, you need to post the picture on Instagram that I took of you where I brought you the box of moon pies that we posted online.
Yeah, I will definitely post that up too. So I'm gonna take this side by side taste test. As I said, I've had wagon wheels in my life, and I know people say this about this sort of stuff, especially with cream eggs, where they say, "Oh, growing up they were so much bigger." But I've looked into this, and wagon wheels used to be much bigger than this. They used to be bigger than the moon pies.
Well, I think the moon pies were bigger too. I haven't done any scientific research. That's a word. Science research. But
okay, well, let me try this. So I'm going to try my wagon wheel. Exactly as I remember it. With a little bit of jam in the middle. And let's crack this moon pie open.
I love the dramatic opening of the moon pie.
Okay. Moon pie. Well, I have to take a drink. Hang on. This is a great audio podcast. It really is.
If I were one of our listeners right now, I'd be like, oh, cringing.
Well, one thing I'll say about the moon pie, it's like the inside of it is like a dust. It's not like a crunchy sort of biscuit type thing. Whereas the wagon wheel, like you say, is much harder.
Which I think I prefer.
Yeah, and I think the wagon wheel has got more flavour to it, if I'm being honest. Even though the wagon wheel famously is not covered in chocolate, it's chocolate flavoured coating.
Well, to be fair, I haven't done any research, but the moon pie is probably not real chocolate either. No. I had to guess. But what happens is where you say like the moon pie is really soft. When you put it in the microwave for about 10 seconds, it kind of all just kind of emulsifies together. I think, and so it makes it like 1,000 times better. I haven't had a moon pie, I don't know, since I was like a kid. I'm not a big sweets person, but yeah, I would say if I had to take a vote, I'd rather have the wagon wheel without the jam.
Okay. Well, I think they do different versions of them now and different flavors and things like that. But this was just your straight down the middle wagon wheel.
And these ones were not for individual sale, apparently, because we can't read any of the information.
Yeah, because they came from a multi-pack.
Darn.
And I will try the moon pie in the microwave because I had to buy a massive box from them from Pigeon Forge. So I'm going to be dining on moon pies for the rest of my days, I think.
Oh, Lord.
Well, there we go. That was just a little, the big debate that everybody's asking about, the wagon wheel versus moon pie debate.
I know, it's been a hot topic for so long.
Exactly, and I'm glad that we've finally settled that one.
To be fair, though, I understand why your brain instantly said this was a wagon wheel, because it really was. But from our perspectives, the people in the room had no idea what Tim was talking about. And we're like, a what? And so it was one of those you had to be there moments, but it's been an ongoing joke ever since.
Yeah, well, there we go. Well, maybe we should develop this into one world food against another world food that's similar. I don't know.
Well, one time I was talking about bugles, like the ones you put on your fingers. So we have they're like little triangles or chips. They're called bugles, and they look, but when you're a kid, you put them on your fingers, so you look like you have like witches' nails or whatever. One time I was asking Tim, I was like, "Did you guys have bugles?" He said, "No, we had hula hoops." And they're like, I googled it. It was like a little hoop thing you put on your fingers. Yeah,
they come in a red packet, and they're like little. They'd be like a ring, but they're not big enough, so you just put them on your fingertips.
Yeah. So apparently kids universally put food on their fingers. All right.
There we are. Well, maybe that's the next thing. Bugles versus hula hoops. I don't know.
All right. So this is a music podcast, so I guess we should get to the music.
Are you sure? Are you sure about that? Have you listened to any preceding 50 episodes, Joy?
It's like 30% music. Basically, yeah, 30% music. The rest of whatever was on me and Tim's mind for the day. So I do have a topic that's music related, and it is a topic we have talked about a little bit. We may have talked about this person's music, and just both of us agree we like this person. The topic is Weird Al.
Oh, Weird Al, fantastic.
So I'm just going to do a little brief history, and I've got like what was voted on as the top 10 Weird Al songs. Me and Tim could just kind of talk back and forth and see if we agree, disagree, if there's things we like about the song. But I'm also just going to have brought up some cool facts about him. And one of the first cool facts I brought up, or what I thought was interesting, is if you don't know anything about Weird Al, if there's anybody out there who doesn't know anything about, one, you need to go watch him, give him a goog. Two, he is a parody artist, so he parodies other artists, and he famously plays what's the name of the instrument? What am I brain? Accordion.
Yeah.
I was going to say something else, but that's all right. So he famously plays the accordion like with polka music type. That's kind of his thing. But he also plays like 74 other instruments. I'm fairly certain that. But to be honest, if you can play the accordion with everything that goes into that, it'd probably be easier to pick up on other instruments.
Yeah, because it's basically a keyboard on one side, and then you squeeze it, and then it has things for playing chords on the other side. So yeah, I can see that.
Like you would have to, I'm sure you could easily pick up the piano and then any type of string instruments because a chord. Yeah, I see how you could kind of translate that into other instruments. But he takes pop artist music or popular music of the day and makes them into fun parodies. And he's very genuine with his parodies. He's not mean, you know what I mean? Not malicious. So it makes it fun for everybody to hear. Mm-hmm. But also he's super talented, like a musician, writing, singing. His voice is actually great. So what was interesting though is the way he came into, and you may have heard this story, you may not have heard this story, Tim. His parents are the reason he actually plays the accordion. So what happened is there was a traveling salesman. He was 7 years old. There was a traveling salesman who came by and was selling lessons for an instrument, and his parents' choices were between the guitar and the accordion, and the parents picked the accordion because there's a famous accordion player in the polka world whose last name is Yankovic, and they said we should have another Yankovic. Frankie Yankovic, I think is what it was.
It's Frankie Yankovic. Frankie Yankovic are those records that you see in thrift shops that are completely wrecked that they still want $1.25 for, and they're by Frankie Yankovic. And I've seen lots of those, and I'd heard that story before.
Well, that is where it came from, and I thought that was super interesting. And apparently he wasn't allowed to do a lot as a kid. I don't know if there was some religious stuff or what was going on, but his parents were pretty strict on him. So because he never really left the house, he said, I had a lot of time to work on playing my instrument. And that's how he got so good. He said he literally just spent hours. And he credits Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, as his inspiration because he played it. He said he just started playing it on I think he took some lessons, but mostly he just learned on his own. And he said he played Goodbye Yellow Brick Road on repeat, just over and over and over and over until he got a knack for it. So that's where that was the main thing. And then apparently he skipped second grade, he said. I guess he was really smart or something. I don't know. But he skipped second grade. And when he skipped second grade, he said people thought he was a nerd. He didn't have a lot of friends. He was involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, but not sports, not anything like that. Like he was in something that was called like the Volcano Club. And he literally said that they did nothing and they were just there to get an extra picture in the yearbook. And he graduated high school at 16 and was valedictorian. So does Europe do valedictorians, or is that an American thing?
It's an American thing. I mean, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, I don't even really know what that means.
It just means he was top of his class and he got to do a little speech. So whoever's got the highest GPA when you graduate from high school, and that's the valedictorian. I think they do it in college too, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it depends on the college. But when you graduate high school, whoever's got the highest GPA is known as valedictorian. They do a little speech at the graduation and get some pats on the back or whatever. Okay. So basically it means he was super smart. And he said that he also learned to run really fast because he was abused a lot as a kid and bullied.
Oh dear, that's terrible.
So poor Weird Al. Okay. So anyway, but he did graduate high school at 16, which in America is usually 18 when you graduate. I don't know if that's pretty standard across the board, but I think it is.
I don't know. I mean, what I know about the US school system, I've learned from TV shows and films.
Well, I just mean, like, how old are you when you graduate high school, or what the equivalent of high school is in Europe? Is it 17 or 18?
Well, you leave secondary school when you're 16.
That's what I thought.
And then you can stay on for 2 more years to the sixth form and do your A levels, and then stay till you're 18. And I stayed on till I was 18, but you don't have to stay until 18. You can leave at 16.
That's what I thought. And so the other thing, and we're going to go into his actual music. These are just some kind of giving you a background of it, some interesting facts. He came up with Weird Al, the name Weird, when he was in college. So his real name's Alfred, where the Al comes from, right? Mm-hmm. And then when he went to college, he went to college for a degree in architecture, which I think is random. So he got a lot of gigs with the campus radio and started playing records like as a DJ. Mm-hmm. And that's when he started calling himself Weird Al. It was his DJ name.
Oh, there you go.
So, and then so on and so forth. And he's big on, and I am not super familiar with this. And Tim, you maybe, are you familiar with a radio broadcaster called Dr. Demento?
I'm only familiar with it because I'm familiar with the works of Weird Al. And I think I heard an interview with Weird Al where he was talking about Dr. Demento.
So Dr. Demento is somebody that he liked. He's heard him. He does some type of broadcast show, I'm imagining with some type of parody type thing. And at some point, he heard Weird Al, and he credits him. He ended up going on Dr. Demento's show, and Dr. Demento played him. And he said, and I read a little blurb. Dr. Demento said the album that he first heard was not perfect, but it was so good he had to get it on the air immediately, which was some album he got from Weird Al.
Oh.
And Weird Al started doing local gigs, and then he got a band and that kind of thing. And so from there, the rest is pretty much history. I wanted to bring this up because we've talked about this a few times. You know how we always talk about people recording their music in bathrooms? That seems to come up all the time.
Yeah, because even like Sammy Hagar during the lockdown was recording lockdown sessions with his band The Circle, and you'd see videos of him in his bathroom singing.
Well, and the story goes, Tim's heard this, I've heard this, acoustically, bathrooms have the best sound, supposedly. I think we talked about albums being recorded in bathrooms. We talked about musicians saying they recorded their best songs in bathrooms. Well, apparently My Bologna or whatever, which is baloney, but My Bologna for My Sharona was recorded in a bathroom.
Oh.
So it says it was in 1979 while he was still in college. Yankovic recorded the parody of the Nash My Sharona in an acoustic tiled bathroom across the hall from the college radio station that he worked on. Finding a microphone cord long enough to reach to the back of a KCPR FM tape, never heard that, deck. I mean, it's a tape deck, is the name of the tape deck, to make it possible. And that's how he got. And then he got like a huge response from My Bologna. And that was like one of the main things that started his career.
No, there you go. KCPR would be the call letters of the radio station, I would imagine.
Oh, KCPR FM tape deck. That's not the name of the tape deck. I get it now.
Yeah.
Smart, Tim. That didn't register with me at all.
It's not a brand like Akai or Tiak or something like that.
That's totally how I read it. Don't come for me, internet. And then I just thought, before I go into what is voted as the top songs for Weird Al, did you know he doesn't legally have to ask permission to record his music? He doesn't, but he does it anyway because he feels like he should. It says, under the fair use provision of the U.S. copyright law, Yankovic and others do not need to ask permission from original artists to satire their work as long as all the royalties are paid. But to stay on friendly terms with other artists in the industry, Weird Al has always asked their permission before recording.
And I know that if you are a recording artist and Weird Al parodies one of your songs, it is seen as a great honor.
It is. And there was one I was reading. Do you remember? And I hate this song. I'm just going to say, if it's your favorite song, I'm sorry, but I hate this song. That Daniel Powter, whatever his last name, Bad Day, that had a bad day, taking one down. That song.
Yeah, I remember that. I was working a job which I didn't like, and that was on repeat on the radio, and I was having a bad day because I hated the job, and that thing kept going on about a bad day, and I was like, oh, this is terrible. So
apparently I hated that song, and the reason I hate it is because my mom always watched American Idol, and when someone would get voted off of American Idol, that's the song they would play. Oh, so for like 6 weeks straight, once a week, I had to hear that song. And I mean, it's not anything, it just like you said, just plain annoying. So apparently he wanted to do a version of it as You Had a Bad Date. Mm-hmm. But Daniel Powter turned it down. And he said literally the next day, he's like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. He like runs back to try to get him to do it. And he had already accepted was getting ready to start recording White and Nerdy. So he couldn't go back and record because it was already, all the sessions were set up.
No,
that's his opportunity. Yeah. And then finally, because we've talked about this, there was a time in 1982 where Weird Al and his newly formed band had their first major gig, and it was a disaster. The band opened for a then popular new wave band called Missing Persons. I'm not familiar with them, but sure. At Santa Monica's Civic Auditorium, where they were on the receiving end of assorted objects thrown at them for the 45-minute set.
Oh, dear.
I remember his band scrambling for loose change as soon as the curtains went down because they were bored.
That's terrible. I mean, I've only ever witnessed a support act that was so bad that people threw stuff at them. And when I saw Tenacious D, this was 15 years ago, they were touring and they played in the UK, and they had a comedian as a support artist. And I can't remember what the guy's name was, and it will come to me some point during this podcast. But he was playing a character, and the character he was playing was of a terrible comedian, and he would tell either a bad joke or a sick joke or just a joke that's not funny, and then he'd go, "Ha ha, that was so funny," and then that was his whole skit. And people didn't like it, and they started throwing stuff at him and throwing coins at him. It was terrible.
Oh, no.
But Hannah and I saw Tenacious D 3 times on this tour, on 3 different venues. And he told all the same jokes at each venue, and it was the same response every time.
See, I could understand not liking an opening band. I can understand. Heck, I've actually been to concerts, though, where, Tim, I went to one concert. It was Neon Trees, and then it was, what was that band? They did that Haley's Comet. It was an alternative rock band. They did Haley's Comet. It doesn't matter. Neon Trees' opening band was better than the headliner. Oh. I don't know what was with that guy's voice that night, but it was just rough. You could tell he either oversang, strained himself, or maybe he just wasn't a great singer. But the headliner was better than the actual closing act that time. So you can't always make that choice. But at that same concert, he says he was walking out to his car. A 12-year-old boy came up to Weird Al and says, "Are you Weird Al?" I say, "Yes." And he said, "You suck." Oh, no. He yelled it at him, and he said that was the capper of the evening. After that, the band agreed to never play as anyone's opening act, just to be a headliner of small shows. As a rule, they wouldn't break for 5 years upon agreeing to open for the Monkees in 1987, and their fans were far more civil.
Well, it's opening for the Monkees. I mean, that's something you couldn't even do now because we lost our last monkey recently.
We did, actually. And I mean, it's just so random that of all the headliners to go back to, the one they choose is the Monkey. It's like, well, Monkees, I don't feel like the people going to watch the Monkees would be that bad. So the next thing I just want to go through is our favorite, the Rolling Stone, did a piece where they went through and they sent out to thousands of people and they voted for what they think the best Weird Al songs are. So I just wanted to run through them. It's just 10 songs. The 10th being, and you'll probably know this one right off the back, is The Sega Begins. So,
it's a Star Wars thing. Isn't it the Star Wars thing to the tune of Bohemian Rhapsody, if I remember correctly?
Isn't the same? I thought it was Don Henley's American Pie, or Don McLean's American Pie.
Yeah, that was it. I know there's a Bohemian Rhapsody thing, and then there's that. Yes, I do know that one, and it takes you through the whole story of Star Wars from like the prequels all the way up to the end, up to when it was written, at least.
And so the funny thing about that is, and Don McLean, I said Don Henley, that's the wrong name. Don McLean's American Pie is so long that it was the perfect song to choose to do that too. It's a really long song.
Yeah.
But anyway.
It is. I mean, the original is a long song and the parody's long.
Yeah. And I was sitting there thinking about that while I was listening to some of these whenever I come back, and I was listening to this one, and I was thinking about how long that song is. From a musician standpoint, Tim, I felt like if I were on stage and had to play that song for the full 5 to 6 minutes, I would start to get bored at some point.
I've played American Pie with Ian, and it does go on for a while, it's fair to say. And then there's a bit in the middle when Ian and I used to do it, where there was a call and response part and all that kind of stuff going on. So yes, it is a long song. I have played it, but it depends. If you're playing to an agreeable audience, if you're playing a long song, it doesn't really matter. That
makes sense. I will say, when you do, me and Chubb have joked about the modern day wedding DJs, playing the music of the times. If you do a line dance of the electric slide at a wedding, cut it. It is incredibly too long to keep going for the full length of the song. Do you know what I mean, Tim? Most DJs are going to cut that. Other ones, the Cupid Shuffle or the Cha-Cha Slide, they can go for pretty much. But the electric slide is literally just the same back and forth. You're doing the exact same motion over and over and over. It is really long. We had a DJ at a wedding that I was at who was not a regular DJ. They did not cut it. And by the time everybody was about ready to have a heart attack, because we spent the last, 4 minutes going in the exact same motion. It felt like we were in an aerobics class. So there's my other tip of the day. If you're going to put the electric slide on, cut it.
Well, Joey, where was you on New Year's Eve when I was playing a gig in a Moose Lodge when I played the electric slide and people were dancing to it, and I probably made them dance too long?
Well, now you know, Tim. Just cut it. Just take a minute off. Just cut it.
Okay, I'll make an edit. I've done audio editing before, I think. It'll be fine. I'll just cut a bit off,
I mean, you can just hit the stop button at the end of the phrase. But yeah, it's, and everybody was in a grill at that wedding party. They're like, "Oh my God, when does this song end?" Anyway, so, and then the next one is one that, because so my husband, Charlie, and so he's a dedicated Weird Al fan, and I like him too, but Charlie loves Weird Al. He loves this one, Trapped in the Drive-Thru. Are you familiar with this one, Tim? This is one where they're going through the car.
Do you know, I don't think I've heard that one. I've got most of Weird Al's stuff, and I'm familiar with the quote-unquote hits, but I don't know if I know that one.
So it's making fun of R. Kelly's that Trapped in the Closet, which I don't know if you've heard, but it's a really long song. And he's like, I'm trapped in the closet, I'm coming out of the closet, and just like weird kind of phrases. So they're like, it's a couple and they're in the car together and they're trying to figure out what they're going to eat. And they're like trapped in the drive-thru because they can't figure out what they want to eat. They go back and forth. Then he realizes he doesn't have the money. There's like a spiel back and forth. Well, what do you want? What do you want for dinner? You know? And it's just a play on like that conversation couples have had many times, but it uses that really long Trapped in the Closet song by R. Kelly.
Yeah, do you know, I've never even heard the original one, surprisingly.
No, I mean, it's really funny though. Like it is like, I would say we will have to post it. If you've never seen Trapped in the Drive-Thru, it's not even just a song. Like he's done like an animated video to it that goes along with the song. Mm-hmm. It's very funny. That one's one of Charlie's favorites. Now this one is my personal favorite of Weird Al, and it's okay. I am going to say something that's controversial, and Tim might find this controversial. Okay, everybody, hot off the presses. Weird Al's most recent album, where he did Blurred Lines and where he did Fancy and all those songs, I actually liked. That was my favorite Weird Al album. I'm sorry, I like the modern day one.
Yeah, I mean, I like some of the tracks on that were very clever, and I think he did some very clever stuff with contemporary music on there, parodying it, especially Word Crimes for Blurred Lines.
That's the song that we're getting ready to say. It's Word Crimes. Word Crimes is my favorite.
Yeah, but I would say as far as my favorite Weird Al stuff, it has to be the album Even Worse. I think that's probably my favorite.
That makes sense. But for me, I mean, I loved Happy is Tacky. I liked Foil because I'm constantly going aluminum foil. Like anyway, so I love that album. And I think that I don't know, like he's saying, to take those pop songs and do them that justice was really good. So I loved Word Crimes. And I mean, if you've never heard Word Crimes, I mean, he's literally taking this song, Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke, which we all know has become controversial at this point. And he's talking about people who just do word crimes. They have no form or grammar. And like, I love when he's talking about like your syntax and your sentence structure, but it's so clever and so done. It sounds weird that you could do that so well, but to take that type of topic and put it so perfectly in there, Tim, that takes a talent I don't have.
Yeah. And he's making a social comment of the day as well, because one thing that like the internet and social media and emailing and all that kind of stuff has taught us is people that you know very well don't know the difference between there and there and they and there and all of those kind of words, and people you know don't know how to spell.
Yeah. And he talks about that. What is it? When it's about you literally can't get out of bed, and they're using literally, and then the person's like wrapped in a bed, like they can't get out with chains. It's like, no, you literally can't get out of bed. And he comments on one that I hate. It's when people say I couldn't care less because they could care less. Yeah. Anyway, that's one that I like too. So Word Crimes is a favorite for me. The next one is, of course, I Lost on Jeopardy.
Yes, that is a Weird Al classic.
And apparently there's some story about he's part of the reason that Jeopardy was put back on the air by Wheel of Fortune. Something about I read the story earlier. He was on Wheel of Fortune and the guy had heard his song, and he's like, they were trying to find a show to go in line with Wheel of Fortune. Cause whenever I was younger, my mom always watched Jeopardy. So it went Wheel of Fortune and then Jeopardy came on. Mm-hmm. Mom didn't watch Wheel of Fortune. It was always like, it was like they were ending. She turned it over, getting ready for Jeopardy. Mm-hmm. But apparently his song coming out is the reason they put Jeopardy in that slot, because the guy over Wheel of Fortune heard it. I was like, oh, we should put Jeopardy with us. And that's the story. Now, no one knows for sure if that's 100%. They thought the guy on the air might have been being a little facetious, but anyway.
Well, I don't know. It's a good story if it's true. I would say that Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy were not shows that happened growing up in the UK. I think we had Wheel of Fortune, a UK version of Wheel of Fortune, I think, but we certainly didn't have Jeopardy.
Well, I had to watch Jeopardy basically every day of my life. Growing up, my mom was big on Jeopardy. I mean, I guess it taught me a lot of facts. I mean, it's not bad. It's just a show asking questions and you answer it. I mean, I'm sure you've seen Will Report, or you know the basics of Jeopardy by now.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what they're saying is that was the reason. And then number 6, which before I say this is very interesting. I read about this earlier. It's Like a Surgeon. But did you know that was Madonna's idea?
No, I didn't know that. And that doesn't surprise me because, we've spoken about Madonna before. And she is so in control of her Madonna brand. It's almost like she said, okay, we're going to do this and release this album, and then we will get Weird Al to parody this song. So I could see her coming to that conclusion. You
could be right, because apparently not long after Like a Virgin came out, Madonna was walking in the streets of New York and said something along the lines of, how come Weird Al hasn't done Like a Surgeon yet? Weird Al heard it, liked the idea, and then produced it. Now, Weird Al said this is the one time he took advice of an other artist with his parodies. He doesn't apparently he's kind of particular because I guess I imagine, like you're saying, there's people who are putting music out and then they're probably trying to get in contact with him to get him to parody it to make their song really popular. And that probably gets annoying, right? Mm-hmm. I think that probably happens a lot. So he does not do it. But because she did it, I think not to him directly, and he heard it and liked it, he said it was the one time he recorded something that an artist recommended to him.
Yeah, and the other thing that's interesting about Like a Surgeon, a lot of the later Weird Al parody songs are almost a carbon copy. That his backing band that he uses, who he's had for decades, are able to completely replicate what other musicians have done. And it's almost like if you listen to the backing tracks side by side, they're almost completely identical. But in the early Weird Al years, especially with Like a Surgeon, yes, it sort of sounds a bit like a Virgin, but it's not quite the same. And I think from sort of that point onwards,
it got better and better.
Yeah, him and his band moved towards making almost carbon copies of the original tracks.
Interesting. Well, and see, I was reading when I was doing the research for this episode, Michael Jackson was a huge Weird Al fan. Mm-hmm. And he was really happy with Eat It for Beat It, but he did not want him to do he did not approve of him doing a parody of Black or White, because that was a commentary on society as whole. And I think there is one out there, and I can't remember what he called it. It doesn't matter. So occasionally he'll play it at his concerts, but it was never produced. But other than that, Michael Jackson was a huge fan, always talked to Weird Al, was excited when he did his music, but for whatever reason, he did not want him to do Black or White. Well, I see the reasoning behind it, but
I can understand that. I mean, it would be like Weird Al parodying, what do you call it? Killing in the Name of Rage Against the Machine. I mean, that song is making a very strong statement, and then making a parody of it is not really that cool.
And Lady Gaga didn't want him to do what song is it? The one that's about LGBTQ. I Was Born This Way. Mm-hmm. I think he did end up doing it, but Lady Gaga didn't care for it. She liked Weird Al as a person, but she didn't care for him doing that one because it was a big stance on LGBTQ plus people. So
sure, it's the same thing. You're making a statement with your piece of art, and most things are fair game, but some things you feel, you're making a strong statement, so you don't want it parodied.
So number 5 is Smells Like Nirvana. And to be fair, I'm not, just like we just talked about. Black or White was going to be Snack All Night. That was the name of it. I just remember Snack All Night. But Michael Jackson didn't sign off on it, so it never came to be. But anyway, so now then after he didn't get to produce that one, he did the Smells Like Nirvana. I'm not a big Nirvana fan to begin with. I'm just being honest. I'm sorry. Don't come for me. I think that some of their music is all very similar radio filler to me.
Yeah, I was there when Nirvana broke. I may have told this story, but I'm going to tell it again. But we had MTV Europe long before any of my friends from school had it. We had a satellite dish in MTV Europe, and they were playing that on heavy rotation. Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I thought, well, this is new. This is kind of cool. And I remember recording it on an audio cassette tape and taking it to the music room with my friends who I used to hang out with and had a band with, and we used to play music every lunchtime and stuff. And I said, this is new. I said, this has just come out, and it hasn't come out here yet. Listen to this. And they listened to it, and they went, that's nothing. And then, roll forward 6 months when it all blew up.
And everybody's like, whoa!
Yeah, and everyone's walking around in Nirvana t-shirts and go, oh man, Kurt Cobain, he's the next John Lennon and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, hang on a minute, where was you 6 months ago?
Oh, Tim was an original.
But I don't know. I'm not really a fan of that at all.
I mean, I don't hate it. It's just not like the top of my list.
No, I mean, I understand the significance of that particular kind of music at that time and all that. I get the whole timeline thing, but as a piece of music that I would enjoy, it's not something I would ever listen to. I think in that grunge era, there are better bands. Pearl Jam, Soundgarden. I think the music that they make was much better than what Nirvana was making, just from a personal taste perspective.
I like a few Nirvana songs, but I don't like Smells Like Teen Spirit the most. Like, there's other Nirvana songs I'd much rather hear if I have to hear one.
Yeah, I think the Nirvana song that I like the most is Heart Shaped Box off In Utero. If I had to pick out a favorite Nirvana song, that would be the one I like.
I like Lithium.
Yeah.
That's one that I like.
A lot of the Nirvana songs from Nevermind, they all sort of follow this kind of clean guitar quiet, dirty guitar loud bit with funky chord changes in those two bits. It's like a pop formula but in a rock grunge style. So
what's interesting about that is I have never put into words what you described, but that makes complete sense. Clean guitar quiet, loud guitar dirty. Oh, that makes a lot of sense, Tim, and that is structurally how their songs were. Interesting, Tim. I think there's still a brain in that head.
And the other thing, from a guitar nerd perspective, that guitar tone is a boss metal zone, and that's that sound.
Okay. I don't know if that. Well, back to the Smells Like Nirvana. What's interesting or a cool fact was the video for Smells Like Nirvana was shot in the same school as Smells Like Teen Spirit in Culver City, California. And they even used some of the same cheerleaders and janitors who they dressed in a tutu.
No.
For the video.
Yeah, because if you see the two videos side by side, they're almost completely identical the way they're shot and everything.
Yeah, apparently it was the same school. I didn't know that until I read this. Okay, so number 4 is White and Nerdy.
Now, White and Nerdy. I love White and Nerdy.
That was coming.
The video of it is absolutely fantastic. It's Hannah's favorite Weird Al song. So it's a video that I'm very familiar with because we've watched 100 times. I'm exaggerating, but lots and lots of times. And it's got some cool stuff in it. One of the cool things it has in it has a reference to the Star Wars holiday special. There's an undercover deal where he gives some guy on a back street some money, and he pulls out a videotape, and it has the Star Wars holiday special on it.
I know exactly what you're talking about. So I've watched the video about 4,000 times because it came out in 2006, which means I was 16 years old when this song came out. So it was everywhere for me. Like, it was the Weird Al song I've heard probably I know everybody's going to say Amish Paradise, but for me, I think I've even heard White and Nerdy more, to the point that I've reached almost like my cusp of as much as I can hear it. But I can see the video in my head perfectly. I mean, I will say of all of his because it's not more modern, but of all of his more recent, because 2006 is obviously more recent than 89, I'd say this was probably the most popular by far.
And the album that it comes from, I think it's called Straight Out of Linwood, which is the place where he grew up. And I bought it in a thrift shop recently.
It is Linwood. I saw it on the thing.
Yeah, great. Straight Out of Linwood. And I bought it in a thrift shop recently, and it's incredibly unique. I'd never even seen one of these before, and I didn't even know they existed. So the CD, it was a special thing that they tried to sell for a while that they don't do anymore.
Yeah.
One side of the disc is an audio compact disc, and then you flip it over, the other side is a DVD.
I wouldn't even know that was a thing.
No, and they had their own kind of special boxes. So, you have a DVD box and a CD box, and it's like a halfway house between the two, and it's got a side clasp thing on it. And I saw it in the thrift shop, and it was $4. And I thought, well, it's a little bit more than I'd pay for a used CD, but I was like, I've never seen this before. And then when I got home and looked it up,
did you give it a goog?
Yeah, I gave it a goog. And it was like a format that they tried to sell around in the early 2000s. They just never caught on. And there's only 50 titles or 60 titles that was ever released on this double-sided disc format.
Yeah, I mean, I've never... That's weird. I really must not have taken off because I'd never even heard of that. Interesting. So number 3 is, probably could have guessed it, Amish Paradise.
I have an Amish Paradise story, actually.
What is your Amish paradise story?
Well, I've been up to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which has a large Amish community there. And if you go up to Lancaster, you see a lot of Amish folks driving around on horse and buggies. Just because they live that lifestyle, and that's what they do. The curious thing about with the horse and buggies they have is that, as the song says, they shun fancy things like electricity and technology and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But because of DMV regulations, their buggies have to have indicators and stoplights. So you see a horse-drawn carriage that has a stoplight and an indicator on it, which is.
I've been to Hershey's Park up there, which is an amusement park. So, yeah.
So the first time we went up there, I burned Amish Paradise on a CD, and all the time we was in Lancaster, we was listening to that on a loop.
I wonder if people in Amish country have heard that song about 1 million times, because there's probably people with their windows down doing that. I have to tell you this. It is not necessarily related to Amish Paradise, but it's related to Amish people. So there's this Family Guy episode, and this is not related necessarily to Amish Paradise, but just Amish people. Basically, they're going kind of in the area Tim was, like Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where you're going to have a lot of Amish country. Their car breaks down. They break down right by an Amish area, and they walk over to the Amish area to stay the night, blah, blah, blah. Somehow, Peter's daughter ends up falling in love in one night, mind you, with an Amish boy, and the Amish boy falls in love with her, and they run away together. Anyway, so Peter and the Amish dad start fighting, and he's like, I'm going to teach this town about rock and roll, like it's an 80s movie. And he pulls out a record player. No, it's like a CD player. And guess what song it is?
It's got to be Amish Paradise.
It's not, though. That's what I thought the opportunity was going to be. He actually ended up playing Highway to Hell, and it's just blaring through the Amish community. And I was like, they missed such an opportunity. Why wasn't it Amish Paradise?
Because I'm sure that Weird Al would have given clearance for that. I'm sure.
But I will say it does make me laugh to see him screaming, I'm on a hoe at the Amish people. And they're just staring back at him. Anyway, that's what I was thinking, though. They missed such an opportunity, Tim. They should have called you. You would have told them. Anytime you're near an Amish community, you have to play Amish Paradise.
Well, I'm sure that the folks who live in Amish communities and, they live that lifestyle and that's the choice that they've made. And that's all cool. It's absolutely fine. I'm sure those folks who don't listen to the radio and don't watch TV and, do all the things that they do, I'm sure all of them have heard Amish Paradise 50 times. That's
what I'm thinking, too. It makes you wonder, what their perception of non-Amish people are. If that's what they're hearing. But I will say, if you've ever been near those, they always have those little stands where they're selling Amish blankets, Amish butter, the hand-churned butter and stuff is really good if you ever get a chance to buy it.
Yeah, I've been into some of those stores that they sell all those quilts and all those handmade goods, and they're incredibly well made.
The dolls are creepy, though.
Yeah, but dolls are creepy. It doesn't matter who's making them, if they've been made in China or they're made by hand. Dolls are creepy. You know how they don't
put faces on them? Have you seen the ones they don't put the faces on?
There's
no faces.
Shut it down, Joy. Shut it down.
They think it's vain to put their face on the doll. It's creepy. I'm sorry. I have a feeling I have no problem with anyone being Amish. It's their lifestyle. They can do what they want. But I don't feel like we have a lot of Amish listening to this podcast. I could be wrong.
I mean, if anyone in the Amish community wants to listen to this podcast, they're more than welcome. But I think you're probably right that of the listeners we have, and we have many listeners across the world, I think I've yet to see anyone in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in particular, on our stats.
Just a theory. All right. So number 2 is Eat It. So that is Michael Jackson's Beat It, of course, which we were just talking about. Michael Jackson was apparently a huge fan of Weird Al. So.
Yeah, and that, again, that's one of those songs that's almost like the original, but it's not exactly like the original. It's in the same era as Like a Surgeon, where you get the point, but it's not a carbon copy of the original.
So, question, because they're doing the video, the Beat It scene, where they're in the looks like a parking garage or whatever.
Yeah,
and they're going
the
back
two
and forth.
gangs and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, do you think Eat It would be produced today? Because I feel like it would not, because of the culture we live in. I feel like it wouldn't have got the green flag nowadays.
Probably not, no. I mean, it's the 80s, Joy. It was a different time.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong. I'm just saying I was thinking about it. I'm like, I don't think they would have been able to produce this song today. Or if they had, there would have been backlash.
Yeah, there's always backlash for stuff.
Turn black backlash. All right. And number one is another one that I don't know would have been produced today. It is Fat.
Yeah, now I know facts about Fat. So it comes from the album that I mentioned before, Even Worse, which is, even the album cover is a parody of Michael Jackson's Bad. He's in the same kind of suit. And I used to have the gatefold album of Bad, and I had the gatefold album of Even Worse. And the way that it was set up, all the cover art, the fonts, everything was identical, apart from where it said Bad in the spray paint, it said Even Worse.
And see, I had that T-shirt with the Bad on it. I had that exact T-shirt. I
had that T-shirt too.
Huh?
Did your Bad T-shirt have all the tour dates on the back?
Yes. That's so weird. I didn't know that. I ordered mine on eBay.
Maybe I had the same T-shirt because the very last date that he played on the Bad tour was Aintree Racecourse in the UK.
Yeah, I ordered mine on eBay and it had the Bad like in the spray kit and it was him, and then it had the tour dates on the back.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I've got a picture of that somewhere, and I'm gonna, even if I don't post it, I'm gonna send it to you because I have a picture of me wearing that T-shirt.
I probably do. I'll have to go see if I can find one. It'd be funny if we could compare it. But yeah, I had that T-shirt. I mean, I don't think I have it anymore. It was years ago, but I had that T-shirt.
There we are. Anyway, that was not my fact. My fact is I knew that Michael Jackson was an incredibly big fan of all the work of Weird Al, and when he did Fat, Weird Al wanted to recreate the video the same, much like he'd done in the past. And he didn't know what subway station or what area of what subway station that it was filmed at. So Michael Jackson got his video director or art director, whoever it was, to let Weird Al's people know the exact filming location so they could recreate it shot for shot. That's
pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, apparently I learned while doing this, MJ's a big Weird Al fan, but I feel like a lot of people are big Weird Al fans. He's a pretty lovable guy.
Yeah, even like I heard that Kurt Cobain loved the fact that his song got parodied by Weird Al. It was, it's like, we've made it now. I mean, if Weird Al is doing our songs, and I think it was much the same thing. I think that they told them where it was filmed and all that kind of stuff.
So the reason I thought of this episode was I was looking at YouTube videos or something, and it came up at one of the MTV Music Awards. Weird Al came out on stage with Coolio. And if you don't know, Coolio did Gangsta's Paradise, which is where Amish Paradise came from. And he, how Coolio had the hair? Weird Al came out and had his person do his hair identical to Coolio's. And so they came out on stage and had to host something together. And at one point, Coolio was like, that's pretty good. You should let me know who does your hair. And there's this famous thing that Coolio wasn't a huge fan of him doing Gangsta's Paradise, because Gangsta's Paradise was like we were kind of saying, it was very personal to him and his story and yada. But this is supposed to be like some truth between them, and they finally became friends. Part of it was because Weird Al wore his hair on stage.
No, well, Weird Al did seek permission, but he got it from Stevie Wonder because Gangsta's Paradise is a copy of Pastime Paradise. So Stevie Wonder is the rights holder for that particular song. So he approached Stevie Wonder for permission. Stevie Wonder gave him permission to do it. So he did it. Whereas Coolio's is like a mashup of Pastime Paradise. Yeah.
And I mean, it seems like he's fine with it now, but it was just a cute little thing with them both wearing their hair together.
And that's cool. Maybe Coolio does have a good sense of humor after all.
I just thought it was funny when he was like, let me know who does your hair. That's pretty good. Well, Tim, was there any Weird Al songs that were not mentioned on this list that you think are worth mentioning?
Well, I think you've covered the major food groups in the world of Weird Al. As I said, there is a Bohemian Rhapsody type Weird Al song, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
Oh, that's going to bug me because I know it.
Joy, why don't you give it a goog live on air?
Bohemian, I know, hot off the presses, y'all. It only happened how many years ago? Rhapsody, Weird Al, Bohemian Polka.
There you go.
There you go. How do we not think of that? That makes complete sense. I like the aluminum foil song I saw about earlier. That wasn't on this list. But most of the big hits were, I mean, I could put on Weird Al and let it go for days because he's also done like movies, voiceovers. And I was reading, he's done a little bit of everything. He plays with other bands. We've talked about other things he's done with other bands. He's had a very long-standing career.
Yeah, and I like him playing Rivers Cuomo from Weezer in their cover of Africa. The video of Africa, he's fronting the band pretending to be the guy from Weezer, and he does a better job of it than the guy from Weezer does.
And I remember we talked, I think that came up when we were talking about whatever that weird fact was about River Como, I think being dead or something. I don't know. There was he was in the conspiracy episode and that came up before. But yeah, if you go, he's been on TV shows, you know, he's parodied all kinds of things that aren't that popular. And he has his own set of polka music. Like he does like real polka music too.
Yeah, and you should also follow him on Twitter. He is utterly hilarious. He's very current. He every like current affairs story. When he puts it, he doesn't tweet often, but when he does, it's like, yeah, that's funny. I like that.
That's amazing. That's quality tweets when they take their time and when they do hit their perfect timing. I imagine him having good comedic timing in general.
Exactly. And I heard him interviewed on the Rock Solid podcast, which is a podcast I enjoy and I'm a Patreon of. And Pat Francis interviewed him, and that was a great interview. I mean, Pat's a great interviewer anyway, but, you know, Weird Al as an interviewee was absolutely fantastic.
I can imagine. Like he would just have that perfect comedic timing. He also seems like we said he's super smart, and like that goes a long way too. Like when you can be funny, but being really smart makes a big difference in that too.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's everything I have, Tim.
Well, there we go. Well, we'll leave it for this week. Thank you for listening, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
To another day to